Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is trainer education, and the title is Help, My Client's Form Sucks. So, I was talking with a client recently who is a personal trainer, and we were discussing the challenges she's having with clients when she's trying to teach a concept and their movement is just really goofy, really weird, but she's not sure kind of how to best handle it. So we just talked through different concepts that were kind of like good in the moment kind of things you can ask yourself, and then how to kind of handle this overall. So one of the things, for example, we talked about was how this might make her look to other people in her gym. So she gets her clientele kind of like through word of mouth and a lot of recognition just in the commercial gym that she works out at. And she was afraid that like if her client's form like looks horrible, is that going to make her look like a bad trainer? And there's absolutely some truth to that for sure. You know, if people are going to make snap judgments on you, they are going to see you standing there as a trainer, staring at someone using horrible form. And if you're not kind of like verbally correcting it or physically doing something about it, they're going to interpret it as if you either don't know that the form is horrible or that you don't care. So we're going to touch on that a little bit. However, the first thing we kind of talked about was when anyone is new to something, they're going to suck at it. They're not going to be great. So, and we can understand that ourselves, like as trainers, the first times we ever did things, we probably weren't amazing at them, or at least now we can look back over time and see how we've gotten better. And then also just general life. Like we all know if we, picked up a guitar, we're not going to know how to play it the first day, piano, whatever musical instrument. You even have a hobby of sewing, you want to work on cars, you want to weld, whatever it is in life that we want to do as a repetitive normal act, we aren't usually good at it right away. So anytime you teach somebody something new, we have to recognize that they're not going to make it look like a freaking tutorial video that you can put on YouTube the very first time they touch the weights or do the exercise. So our first focus is, can we keep them safe? So that would be kind of the thing that you have to address. So do you have to make sure everything is perfect? No. But do you have to make sure it's safe? Absolutely. So any client that's paying you money is not only paying you for knowledge of how to reach their goal, but they're paying you with the assumption that what you're going to do to tell them to reach their goal is going to keep them safe. So there are unfortunately a lot of trainers who don't do any of that. So they might have somebody do an aesthetic goal and promote a lot of unhealthy eating behaviors, unhealthy exercise behaviors, maybe even unhealthy supplementation, quote unquote, hint, hint. And they just want the person to reach the goal so that they can get there, the trainer can get their before and after picture, get their money, and move on. So there are those kind of trainers. Those trainers don't invest time into listening to these podcasts. So thank you for not being one of them if you already listened to this. So what do we do if we do care? Number one is make sure they're safe. And then typically from there, what I try to do is actually just kind of let the person get some experience. So get a couple sets under their belt, like get some sensations of what the movement feels like. So for example, if I have a movement where I'm trying to tell somebody to not lean onto their toes, they have to know what leaning onto their toes feels like to then know if they're not doing it. So one of the phrases I use, it's just purposely just a weird phrase, is allowing someone to collect a library of feelings. And what I mean by that is they are sensations and feelings from a rep to rep to rep comparison that they can start to identify differences between the reps, between certain positions, between certain concepts. So then, as a teacher to them, as a trainer, when you're trying to get them to move in certain ways, you can then be a little more certain that they have an understanding of what you're talking about. So the first time somebody does something and they say, am I doing this right? And you're like in your head, you're going, oh God, this looks awful, but there's too much for me to fix here. Just first of all, make sure they're safe, and then just tell them, hey, you know what, let's just do a couple sets, and then I'll tell you some things along the way. So that's how I tend to do it. And then, like, let's say the first two sets, they're really forward on their toes on, say, like a dual bent over row with dumbbells. So they're kind of leaning onto their toes. Their back is really upright because they're afraid to kind of bend over. And they're really just kind of squeezing up into their neck rather than in between their shoulder blades. So I might then say, hey, you know what? Right now, I want you to kind of think of if there was a bug under the heel of your foot. So not your toes. But if there was a bug under the heel of your foot and you wanted to make sure that bug couldn't get out, okay, while you're doing the exercise, I want you to lean back into your heels like you're squishing the bug. And that might give them something to feel. And then automatically they're going to say, oh, that feels better. It feels better in my lower back. And you'll say, yes. But since they had the first couple repetitions or the first sets or two maybe on their toes, they then can feel better as to why leaning back in their heels is a good idea. And you can do that with other types of cues or other type of positions, is once they've built a library of feelings, once they have some sensations to compare, you can then correct their, like kind of what you want them to do using those sensations as teaching guides. So you can get them to feel more and more of what's right because they're now aware of what's wrong. Okay? And then when you do try to teach things, make sure you only try to teach one or two things at a time. It would be absolutely overwhelming to give somebody multiple cues all at once. So if they're brand new to a movement, I don't want to give them 3 or 4 things to think of all at once because it's going to be very difficult for them to do so because everything is new. So if you wanted to do 3 new things at one time, that's obviously more overwhelming than 1 new thing at a time. So anytime you're teaching cues, try to teach them only one at a time. And don't add any new cues until the old ones are consistent. So too often I'll see a trainer do that. They'll do in set 1, they'll tell them something, their client something. In set 2, they'll tell them the same, like a new thing, but they never got the thing in set 1 right. And then by set 3, they're telling them a third new thing, and they never got the first 2 things right. So the trainer isn't really kind of like mindful of the fact of whether or not the person's actually being able to execute what they're telling them. So they're just like, well, in set 1 or 2, I'll tell them this. In set 2, I'll tell them that. In set 3, I'll tell them this. So they almost have like a predetermined kind of order of how to do it, regardless of the person's performance. And that's not a good way to do it. You only want to tell them cues in the rate in which they can learn them, and only add new ones once the old ones are consistent. Okay? Then, if we think of others' judgments on us as trainers, we are not here for them. So it's true that the trainer I was talking to, she gets her clientele a lot of times by just people seeing her working with other people in the gym. And if they see her working with someone and the someone is doing something and they look horrible doing it, okay, so they might judge her for that. First of all, can she really do anything about it? No. The person, like your client, can only learn technique of something however fast they can do so. So it is important for us as trainers to explain things in very concise, accurate ways. Okay, meaning we're saying exactly like we're saying the thing we want to say, and can we say it in the fewest words possible? So that's a great sign of intelligence and a great sign of understanding. Is can I say what I want to say, but can I say it quickly, concisely, rather than having it being long, drawn out. And maybe the person gets kind of sidetracked with all these extra details and or has a hard time paying attention. So maybe they're nervous about people watching. Maybe they're nervous to be in the environment. Maybe they're nervous because they kind of know they're messing things up because it just doesn't feel comfortable yet. So if you can say things more concisely and keep them moving, that's better. You can also do things very lightly weighted at first, so that way in case there's a safety concern, you have time to kind of build up multiple cues over multiple sets before something gets heavy enough to actually hurt them. And then, like we said, if somebody's trying to judge you, you can't speed up a client's learning more than just maybe learning how to say your own words better. But you can't do anything beyond that. So therefore, you have to make sure that that's not your focus. So who is paying us for that moment is the client right in front of us. Okay? We are here during their session time for them. We are their guide. We don't want to have too much brain power spent thinking of how other people are viewing us. We want to know, actually, just to be honest, like if you do what's best for you in that moment as a trainer, it'll take care of everything else. So, for example, we've talked before about how if you use a cell phone to track clients' data, I am really, really not a fan of that because it just looks like you're texting people. Okay? It looks like you're not paying attention. And we all know that every cell phone in the world has little updates and highlights when somebody messages you or texts you or sends an email. And you're likely, even if you're typing in your client's data, and if something pops up that says so and so texted you, you're likely now to think of that text or wonder what it is, and now you're sidetracked. So it makes you not a good trainer because it gives you, it presents opportunities in which you can become sidetracked and not do your best. So you shouldn't have a phone on you because you want to be your best. That should already take care of itself. And then, secondarily, not having a phone on you makes you look like you're more engaged. So pen and paper is more engaged, absolutely, than a cell phone. So we wouldn't want to not have a cell phone only because other people might think it looks like we're not paying attention. We want to not have a cell phone because we know we won't pay attention if we get an alert of some sort. So again, if you do what's best for you in that moment with that client, everything else will take care of itself. And chances are, if that person who's maybe viewing you from the outside would consider you as a trainer for them, they're going to be in the gym more than once. They're going to be in there a couple times. They're going to maybe see you work with that client multiple times over. So your goal is to make sure that client progresses and let the progress that that client is able to achieve be the evidence of your knowledge. So it's very hard to combat or fight against or prevent or do anything, preventative wise towards snap judgments. We can't do much about that. So what we can do is focus on what we have control over. We have control over the client making progress. So therefore, let's control the hell out of that. Okay? So over time, the client's technique will get better. Over time, the client will make progress towards the physical kind of adaptation goal of that exercise. And then that's what other people will see and say, like, man, that client looked like freaking crazy. They were doing that horrible last month, but it looked freaking perfect now. And man, they look even leaner. They look even more muscular. Maybe they got stronger. So let the progress be the evidence of your knowledge. Okay? Another thing you can do to improve your ability to teach someone technique is to make sure you do everything yourself first. So we talk about in podcast 264, which is a trainer education podcast, and it was titled Do It First. And what that was in regards to is only teach things that you yourself have done. This is extremely important because then you'll know how it feels. So if you've done the movement yourself and all of a sudden you had kind of a knee pain, you might recognize in that moment, man, when I shifted back onto my heel, that got rid of the knee pain. So then when a client's doing the movement and they say, oh, my knee hurts, you can go, oh, I remember what I had to do to fix that. I'm going to tell them that. So you can then suggest they get back on their heel and all of a sudden they'll say the knee pain lessened or went away. But if you haven't done it yourself first, you will not know how it feels, and therefore you won't be as equipped to tell someone how to adjust the technique to get a different feeling from what they're expressing. So you have to do things yourself first to better understand how to then teach it to other people. So that's another thing. So the first thing was kind of recognizing that beginners are always going to suck, and it's okay. Okay, just let them gather some feelings. Make sure they're safe, first of all. Let them gather some feelings so you can then use those comparisons of feelings to educate them. Only teach them one or two things at a time. And if other people are judging you, let the progress of that client be the evidence. The second thing we can do is to make sure we do everything ourselves first. And like we said, that way we can kind of have a better idea of how it feels, and therefore we can better teach how to change the feeling of the exercise. Now, the third thing we have is recognizing differences in body mechanics. So the trainers I work with in person, and we actually get to see physical movements together, we talk about the concept, well, which is funny. We talk about the concept of learning concepts rather than memorization. So don't memorize the position of a good squat because there are individual differences in body mechanics. Each person's quote unquote good squat can look different from somebody else's. So if you have somebody who's 5'3", they're very compact and they have kind of like even spaced joints, like bone lengths. So their shin, their femur, their torso are all kind of like even. They're going to move very differently than somebody who's maybe 6'4" and has really freaking long femurs. So the person who's 6'4" with really long femurs, they might have to be very bent over in their squat. Whereas somebody with like more balanced bone lengths, they might be able to be more upright in their squat. You can have people who squat well with wide feet, people who squat well with narrow, people who squat well with medium width. So there's a lot of variances to what is going to make something safe and efficient for one person versus another. However, there are general concepts that are true. So for most exercises, you're going to want to make sure the spine is straight, meaning it's not bent or crooked or twisted in some way. Now, obviously, there are certain exercises where we do twist, so I'm just using this as a general example. But in general, okay, there are concepts that even if somebody has a wide squat versus a narrow squat, they're going to want to have their head in line, their neck in line with their spine. So I'm not a big fan of teaching people to have their head up, especially when they do things like conventional deadlifting, because a upward chin promotes a rounded thoracic back and rounded lower back. Now, people can say whatever bullshit they want to say about it, like when I lift my chin, it tightens my thoracic back. Yeah, but it also pulls you on your toes. And then when you go to push from the floor, since you're on your toes, your thoracic spine is almost overextended. Now all of a sudden you have weakness in those positions and you're going to have lower back strain, you're going to have lack of power output. So there are commonalities, okay? Whether someone's short, tall, big, fat, skinny, whatever the classifications, there are concepts that are correct. So keeping the spine in a healthy position, making sure the person's balanced, yada, yada, yada. But how each person implements those concepts can look different. So we have to recognize there are differences in body mechanics. So if we're teaching something to someone and it just looks really awkward on them, you may be trying to force them into a position of memorization. Like everybody has to bench with their hands twice as wide as the width of their collarbones. Bullshit. That's stupid. Not everybody's built the same. There are world record holder bench presses who don't have that width. And multiple world record holders, okay? And they're strong as shit, and they do that to maybe save their stress in their shoulders. So maybe they have more power in their arm and chest, and they don't need as much leverage through the joint. So they might not have to have as wide of a hand position, and they might actually be safer and stronger in the narrower position. So you don't have to have where everyone fits a certain position. So for example, hands twice as wide as your collarbones. No, hell no. Horrible, 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 horrible idea. Because not everybody is built the same. Not everybody has the same dominant muscles. Not everybody has the same bone width, bone positions. So you might have somebody who has relatively wide collarbones, but they don't have very long upper arm bones. So therefore, maybe that ultra wide position overstresses their shoulder than someone else who has wide shoulders but also has long upper arm bones. So the person who's built a certain way might say a certain type of technique memorized based on positioning feels best for them, so therefore everybody else has to do it. No, because they have different body types. So we have to understand that there are concepts of position, but not memorizational forced positions. Okay? Then the last thing we ask ourselves when we think about our clients form is number one, are they safe? So we talked about this at the beginning and we're going to talk about it here at the end. Is are they safe? That's our main goal. So, or are they safe? Are they targeting the muscles that we're intended to target? If those two things are getting done, everything else will help and get better over time. So I've had clients who, they're safe and we're doing exercise maybe to work their glute, but they look really awkward. Okay. But hey, whatever. If they're safe and the muscles getting targeted, whatever, it doesn't matter from there. So it's goofy things, but sometimes certain things don't matter. So I laugh and giggle all the time. Is in our leg press, there are a couple clients I have who say they can only enter the leg press from the left side. Okay, the leg press is symmetrical. There's absolutely no physical difference between left versus right. And there's not like there's something in the way on the right side of the leg press. So their coordination just prevents them from being able to come into the machine from the right side. So they say they have to go from the left. Okay, that's an example of who gives a shit, fine, do it. Whatever gets you in the machine, whatever gets us going, I don't care. Now, is it necessary that they only come in from the left? No, not at all. I could take the time to teach them to come in from the right, but it wouldn't make them any safer and it wouldn't change our results. So you need to ask yourself that. If you're looking at your client's technique and you're like, oh man, this is awful. Well, does it even need to be addressed? Are they safe and are they getting the muscles targeted, the intended targets targeted, okay? Are they getting what they need done? If they are, and they're safe, then maybe the little nuances of technical perfection that you want aren't necessary. Sometimes you just have to let awkward people move awkwardly because that's what they got. Okay? Not everybody has the same level of coordination, and not everybody has the same kind of desire to be perfect with everything they do. A lot of clients, when they come into the gym, they just want to do enough to not be fat and be decently healthy. So they don't care if they know every little nuance of every exercise. They care if they're safe. They care if they're getting results. But if they don't look crisp and, perfect and pretty with everything, oh well. So we have to kind of let that go ourselves as trainers, is sometimes you have a perfectionist nature as a trainer. And exercise is what you love to do. So therefore, you're going to expect your clients to be perfect, and you're going to expect them to love everything that you do. And that isn't going to happen. Okay? Not everybody loves exercise who does exercise. They just recognize it keeps them healthy. Okay? I don't love brushing my teeth, but I do it because I want my teeth to be healthy. So we have to recognize it's not everybody's, kind of cup of tea. If they're safe and they're getting the results they need, they don't care about it beyond that. So that's going to be our main focus. Okay? So if you have a client where the form doesn't look very good, first of all, recognize if they're a beginner, of course it's going to look like shit. They've never done it before. Okay? So just let them go. So make sure they're safe. Let them gather some feelings. And then over time, try to correct the technique as efficient as is needed to get the best results from it. Once you're getting the best results, any kind of technical improvements from there, kind of arguable whether they're necessary or not. If the person literally does want to be their best at it, then go ahead and teach them everything you know. If they don't really care and they're getting the results they need from it, then let everything go. Don't worry about it. Okay? So remember that it's okay if beginners kind of look weird, and give them time to learn multiple feelings of the movement, so then you can better teach them and have them do comparisons over time, okay, to get improvements. Also, only teach one or two things at a time, and don't worry about others' judgment. Let the progress of that client be the evidence of your knowledge. We also talked about do everything yourself first, so you understand the positions and how things feel, so that way you can better give corrections and education on the movement itself. And then recognizing there are differences in body mechanics. So everybody's built a little bit differently. So understand the concept of a healthy, good position, safe position, but don't try to force everybody into the exact same fit. Okay? Cool. So hopefully that gave you some insight, gave you some things to think of. So, and just kind of alleviated some concern over what others might think of you as the trainer if your client's technique isn't good. Don't worry about that. Become the best teacher you can be, so they can learn as fast as they can learn. But eventually there's going to be a limit to that, So you just let the progress of that client be the evidence of your knowledge. Cool. Okay. If you need help as a trainer, so we do trainer consultations all the time. That's actually what this topic came from. So if there's anything you want to know that can maybe help you become a better trainer, or something that you feel is preventing you from becoming a better trainer, and that whether that's like financially, whether it's knowledge base, anything whatsoever. Okay. If you believe that there's something that you could get help on to become better as a trainer, reach out to us and we'll find the help for you. Okay. Our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. Cool. As always, I hope this was helpful. And thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.